Did you know that you could use men's neckties to dye eggs? Today I'm going to show you something I did last year and it was so much fun. We're going to tie-dye some eggs. You ready? Let's go. Okay, so here's a list of things you'll need. The most important thing, though, is make sure that your neckties are all silk. If it doesn't say 100% silk or all silk, it's not going to work. So just keep that in mind because I've had some duds in the past that didn't work because I didn't check the tag. But you're going to take the neckties and flip it around so you can see the seam. And then when you do that, you're just going to snip the threads that's holding it together. Usually it's not like a sewing machine that has a really, really deep seam. It's usually just a couple threads holding it around, just wrapped around that. And you usually have to cut the label too. And you see that white batting in the center. We're going to pull that out when you get it loose and cut it off, because the goal is just to get the fabric with the pattern. I'm going to cut off the bottom half because that's where most of the fabric is, and you're going to end up with like a square of fabric like this with a point. And you're going to do that to every single tie. See how I have that there? I have noticed that darker patterns and even the ugliest ties work the best. I'm even going to try a silk scarf because I know the silk will work for this, and I want at least one egg to turn out. It's always a surprise when you do this, but if it's silk, it should work. Here's a tie I used last year. It has crosses on it, so that's perfect for Easter, and that's a good thing to note that you can use more than one egg per necktie. So now that I have my squares of fabric, I'm going to take each one and a raw egg, and we're going to wrap it to look something like this. But first we're going to take the tie fabric and put the egg on it with the pattern side facing the egg, because that's where the contact between the dye and the shell is going to be. We're going to wrap it around like this and give it kind of a ponytail. You want the fabric to be flush on the one side to the shell, and the other side, just bunch it up and wrap it around as tight as you can with a rubber band. So it looks like you're giving it a ponytail. So something like that. And once you get it wrapped, I'm going to take a piece of cotton cloth. Now I cut up an old t-shirt for this, but I'm going to wrap it around the same way I did with the tie fabric and use a rubber band for that as well. All the cotton cloth does is has an extra protection barrier between the eggs and the different patterns and colors in case they run into each other as we boil them. So again, here's the one with the crosses. We're going to put that pattern side down onto the raw egg, give it a ponytail with a rubber band, and then you're going to wrap it in the cotton cloth. So you're going to do that to every single egg. I'm only going to do 6 eggs because I have a tiny pot to boil them in. You could do a whole dozen if you have a really big stock pot, but I'm going to keep it simple today. And there's the silk scarf. Now, the scarves are a little bit thinner than the tie fabric, so I twist them a little bit before I put the rubber band on. Again, don't wrap them so tight that they're going to break, but you do want them to be as tight as possible. So they're all going to look like that. And I'm going to take them up to the kitchen. I have a pot of water filled up about halfway, and I have some vinegar, just regular white vinegar. You're going to add 2 cups. I know it sounds like a lot, but that's what helps the dye get into the egg shell. And I've done this in the past with not enough and they don't come out as strong. So once you have the vinegar in the pot of water, just kind of push them all in there. Make sure they're nice and wet. I'm going to give them a little swirl. Perfect. And then once they are all in there nicely, I'm going to turn the stove on to about medium heat and turn on the timer for 30 minutes. Now, I have a lot of people always tell me, oh, you're boiling them too long. Well, you don't want to eat these because the dye isn't necessarily food safe, even though it looks like I'm making like a Thai stew of some kind. This is what happens when an artist uses the kitchen. But now the timer went off here. Do you see how the water is kind of red? You can see that the dye took to the egg. The vinegar did its work. So I just have an old towel out on my table and I'm using tongs because they are really, really hot. I'm getting them out there. You can see the steam coming off of them. So I'm going to let them cool down for about 10-15 minutes or so until I can touch them without hurting myself. But just lay them out on the towel. And then once they're cooled down, you can open them up. This is always like Christmas at Easter because it's like opening a present. You don't really know what's going to be inside, but you always hope that it works. So I'm going to snip the rubber band and the cotton fabric off and let's take a peek. Oh, it looks like it worked on this one. Like I said, red patterns and really dark patterns seem to work best, but this is a good example. The one side where it was flush, you'll usually see most of the pattern, and on the back you get kind of like a tie-dye effect because it was bunched up there. Here's the egg with the crosses. Let's see how that turned out. Ooh, I like the bright blue. It's amazing how the colors always turn out brighter than the actual tie. So, and use scissors to snap off the rubber bands. It's not worth trying to get them off with your fingers because it's been boiling for so long. Here's this colorful one. Let's see how that turned out. Ooh, I like it, kind of pastel colors. It wasn't a super dark tie, so it turned out a little lighter than the other ones, but that almost looks like a stained glass window. So cool. And here's the silk scarf. I know that one's gonna work because I did that one last year. Ooh, look at that pattern. I love the pink and the black. Super cool. In the back, you got that tie-dye. Love it. Ooh, and here's a paisley pattern. Now, this was a really, really dark tie. I want to see how this turns out. It's really a surprise, some of the colors. Yeah, look at that orange and pink. That is super cool. Almost looks like a flower. Super pretty. So here are my eggs. Like I said in the video, I wouldn't eat them, but I have heard from others that have done this that they've kept them for years as long as you don't break them and take care of them. So I don't know, but I'm gonna try to keep these as long as possible, and I'll tell you if they rot or not, but have fun.